Hi there, and welcome to this course. I'm Kevin. I'm a solution architect and I've worked in the IT industry for more than 20 years, and I'm a Microsoft MVP for more than 10. My focus these days is architecture and security for web applications and integration components using .NET and Azure. It's hardly a secret that cloud-based computing is everywhere, and that every developer should know what it is and how to use it. In this course, I'm going to teach you the basics of Microsoft's cloud offering, Azure. I hope you'll enjoy it. Let's have a look at what exactly you will learn in this course. I'll start with explaining cloud and Azure basics. What is cloud computing? Why would you want to use it? What is Azure? What are its benefits and how is it organized? Then I'll cover a set of often used core Azure services. You will learn how to create, manage and deploy two Azure App Services used for hosting your web apps and APIs. You will learn how to work with Azure Storage, from table storage, over storing blobs efficiently, to working with queues. I will also dive into Azure's SQL offering, the go-to relational database offering in the Microsoft Cloud world. When you're developing on Azure, you will, just as with local development, need to debug, log things, inspect logs and get an overall overview of your app performance and health. That and more is covered in the section on debugging and logging and working with application insights. And lastly, you will learn how to monitor Azure resources. After this course, you will have learned all you need to know to start developing on Azure. Let's have a look at what the prerequisites are and then dive in. This course is aimed at developers, architects and consultants that are mostly new to Azure. You don't need to know anything about cloud development yet, but you do need to be a developer, consultant or architect with experience with building applications with .NET. For example, throughout the course or course series actually, we'll be working with various Azure services which we will use to create or move parts of a typical application, like a web application built with ASP.NET Core that connects to a SQL database via Entity Framework Core to the cloud. Building that initial web API with ASP.NET Core which connects to a database with Entity Framework Core is not part of the course. It is something that I assume you already know how to do. But that's about it as far as prerequisites go. As far as code is concerned, where applicable, each section has its own starter and finished sample solution, so you can use that to follow along. I'd advise you to follow the course from beginning till end, but it is not a strict necessity. You can also jump in at whichever section you choose. The starter solution will always match the beginning of the section. The finished solution will match what we end up with after the section. So there you go. That's it for the intro section. Let's dive in. In this section, you will learn everything needed to get started with Azure. I'll start with showing you what Azure is and why you'd want to use it. By doing so, you will learn about cloud computing, different types of clouds and vendors. And then we'll look at the primary service models Azure offers for cloud computing. IaaS, which means Infrastructure as a Service, PaaS, which means Platform as a Service, and SaaS, which means Software as a Service. After that, I will give you an overview of the core Azure services. Azure actually offers more than 200 services, but some of them are considered to be core services, as they are so fundamental to building and managing applications. Then it is time for some hands-on demos. You will learn how to set up your local environment by creating an Azure account, installing the correct workloads for Visual Studio, and installing the Azure CLI. Once that's done, you will learn how you can organize resources in Azure, and I'll run through the Azure portal to give you a taste of how to work with it. Let's dive in. You've probably heard of cloud computing before, but what exactly is it? And how does Microsoft Azure fit into it? Let's learn about that. So, cloud computing is the on-demand availability of computing resources, such as storage and infrastructure, as services over the internet. Think about databases, infrastructure like virtual machines, networking services, different types of web servers, but also AI services, data analytics services, and much more. Cost models differ across vendors, but typically you only pay for what you use, which tends to lead to lower costs compared to a traditional data center. So, cloud computing shares on-demand resources over the internet. As a company, you pay to access a virtual pool of compute, storage and networking services hosted on remote servers. That's a potentially huge advantage over a good old traditional data center. With that, you're still bound to the physical constraints of the data center. You can't just make a new data center appear when you all of a sudden need more computing power. But with the cloud, you can. Because of this, the ability to scale and ease with which scaling is enabled is a very important selling point of cloud platforms. Whether you need another virtual server, more memory, a new logical instance of an app and so on, it's often a matter of not even a minute before it's available. Most cloud vendors also guarantee a 99.95% uptime of their services. That is an availability level that's pretty impressive. There's not just one cloud or one way of working with the cloud. Different cloud models exist. A cloud model defines the deployment type of cloud services and resources. In other words, where are they deployed and how can they be accessed? The first one we have is the public cloud. This is a cloud, a combination of services under the full control of a cloud provider. The services on it are available to the general public via the internet. The second one is the private cloud. With a private cloud, services are still delivered over the internet as with the public cloud, but they are dedicated to a single organization. These types of clouds are often hosted in your own data center or in the data center of your network service provider. That means you have more control over it, but it also tends to be more costly. The third option is the hybrid cloud. As you can probably guess, this one is a mix of the previous two models, in which you use the public cloud for some services and the private cloud for other services. It thus offers more flexibility and versatility than the other two. Different cloud vendors exist, obviously. At the moment of recording, the three big ones are AWS or Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure and the Google Cloud Platform. It is, by the way, increasingly common as a company to use cloud services from different vendors. You'd call that the multi-cloud model. Now, as mentioned, scalability and availability are selling points for cloud platforms. But there's more. Security, of course, is a big one as well. Almost all cloud platforms offer extensive security services and resources, from making it easy to handle denial of service attacks over data encryption, firewalls, key management, right up to offering extensive identity and access management solutions, like Microsoft Entra ID on Azure, AWS IAM on Azure Web Services, or Google Cloud Identity on the Google Cloud Platform. Another big selling point is reliability. In other words, how easy can you recover when something goes wrong? Due to the fact that most cloud vendors offer their services across the world in different regions, you can easily deploy your own resources like a web API to different regions. In the unlikely case that one region fails, the other regions still offer your resources. In fact, let's have a look at how Azure handles this. What you see on this map here, amongst a few other things, are Azure's existing and announced regions. You can look at a region as one or more physical data centers that are geographically close to each other. Let me open one. Say the Western Europe region, as that happens to be where I'm living. This one is located in the Netherlands. When you create an Azure resource, as we will soon do, you need to specify the region for it. Like that, you can create your resources in different regions to improve the reliability. Also interesting to know is that a lot of regions in Azure are automatically replicated to paired regions. You can have a look at those via the link on screen. If you have a look at Europe, in this table, for example, you can see that the West Europe region, located in the Netherlands, is paired with the North Europe region, which is located in Ireland. In case of a disaster that causes the outage of a full region, the resources will still be available in the paired region. You can also read something here about availability zones. Apparently, West Europe is a region with 3 availability zones. An availability zone is simply a physically separate data center, completely isolated from other data centers in that same zone. They have their own power supply, they have their own networking, and so on. That means that when one zone fails, the others keep on working and the region stays up. So, all of this just to say that the reliability of a cloud platform is much higher than what an old-style non-cloud data center can typically offer. There's more advantages to cloud platforms, but these are, in my opinion, some of the most important ones to know about as a developer. So like that, we almost unnoticeably shifted to Azure. Microsoft Azure is a cloud computing platform, a huge platform actually. At the moment of recording, it consists of more than 200 different services. I've opened the Azure site. On top here we can have a look at the products and services that are on offer. Virtual machines, Azure SQL, AI services, but also Azure Functions for serverless development, Azure App Services for hosting and developing your web APIs and apps, data analytics services, and if we click to view all products, we can find even more in a bunch of different categories. Other important ones are identity-related services for identity and access management, API management services for managing and exposing your APIs, and so on. We will encounter quite a few of these during the course series. I won't cover all of them though. Azure is not only focused on application development, it's much broader than that. Going from development-related services over more IT pro-focused services to services catered to business owners. But this is a developer-focused course, so I will focus on the services that you, as a developer, are most likely to need in your day-to-day job. Also important to know is that Azure is very much a living and breathing thing. Services are added regularly and sometimes retired or renamed. Pricing can change, the type of plans you have can change, and so on. I will regularly show you throughout the course where you can find Microsoft's documentation for a specific service or feature, so you know where to look. Let's learn about the different service models Azure has to offer.